Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Snippets of Knowledge, the place where we dive into the pages of groundbreaking business books to bring you the most valuable insights. Have you ever wondered what it truly takes for a startup to succeed in today's fast-paced, ever-evolving economy? Well, today, we're going to unpack the secrets of sustainable business practices as presented in The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. This book has changed the game for entrepreneurs and innovators around the world, and we're about to find out how. So, whether you're toiling away in your garage on the next big thing, or you're interested in disrupting markets with smart, agile strategies, you're in the right spot. Get ready to learn about transforming uncertainty into opportunity through a continuous process of innovation. Let's get started. All right, let's dive into the crux of the lean startup philosophy, which revolutionizes the way we look at launching a business in today's fast-paced world. At its core, this methodology isn't just about making money or products, it's about learning as quickly as possible what resonates with customers and what doesn't. So, the lifeblood of the lean startup is the build, measure, learn feedback loop. Here we go. First up, we build. We're not talking about grandiose, perfect products. Nope, we're talking minimum viable products, MVPs. This MVP is your starting line, the simplest version of your idea that you can actually sell. The idea is to spend minimal time and resources to get it into customers' hands. Why? Because real feedback is worth more than all the conjecture in the world. Once the MVP is out there, the measure part kicks in. This is the stage where you're gathering concrete data on how customers are using or not using your product. I'm talking about user engagement, features they love, features they ignore, and actual behavior versus what they say they do. And this isn't about vanity metrics that just look good on paper. This is about actionable metrics that tell you what's really happening. From this, we loop back to learn. This learning isn't just, oh, neat, they liked it, or they kind of hated it. This is validated learning, rigorous data-driven evidence that tells you whether to pivot or persevere. Should you refine your MVP, change a feature, or scrap it and pivot in a new direction? That's the million-dollar question. Now, this might sound a bit sterile, all this talk of data and feedback loops, but let me assure you, it's far from it. This is where the startup romance happens, those make it or break it moments, the pivots, the successes that sometimes only come after failure, learning from actual users, and figuring this out together. It's a philosophy that celebrates the journey itself, because that's where the real insights are, and ultimately, that's where the value lies. So imagine this process as one big, bold experiment. You've got a hypothesis, your business idea. You test it, gather the data, and learn from it. Just like in a science lab, except your lab is the real world, your experiments are products, and your results are spoken through customer voices and hard data. That, my friends, is the lean startup methodology in action. It's all about getting to the heart of what your customers really want and adapting before you burn through all your resources. One last thing before we move on, it's easy to get attached to our first ideas, but the lean startup teaches us the discipline to put our assumptions through the ringer and be willing to make tough decisions. Because in the end, it's not about who's got the flashiest plan, but who learns the fastest and adapts. So, what say you? Are you ready to build that MVP, measure with discernment, and learn like a pro? Ready to enter that feedback loop and come out leaner, smarter, faster? Let's see how this methodology unfolds in practice in our next segment. Stick around. Right, let's dive into the idea of validated learning, a pivotal concept from the lean startup. It's fundamentally a structured approach to understanding whether you're truly creating value for your customers while you're burning through resources at a startup pace. Validated learning starts with a hypothesis about your business. Much like a scientist, you're testing your predictions through experiments. The results? They're not measured in just revenue, but in actionable insights and lessons learned. So what's your minimum viable product? That MVP. It's actually your first experiment. Now here's where it gets exciting. Your MVP is out in the wild and it's time to gauge the response. Are people biting or are they loitering around without much interest? This is where you establish your metrics. But we're not just shooting in the dark here. Those metrics should be actionable, accessible, and auditable, the 3 A's that Ries swears by. As those metrics roll in, you get to see where you stand. Are you moving the needle in the right direction, or is it stagnant? And here comes the fun yet daunting part, interpreting the data. This is no easy feat because numbers can be deceiving. You have to understand them in the context of your real-world challenges and customers. If the data tells you your assumptions were off, don't sweat it. That's valuable. It means you've learned something critical about what doesn't work. This knowledge helps you make those all-important pivots or decide to persevere with your current strategy. Essentially, validated learning isn't about patting ourselves on the back for every step taken. It's about rigorously questioning every step to make sure it's a step forward. And remember, in the world of startups, learning isn't a detour. It's the most direct path to creating a sustainable business. Every startup journey is teeming with uncertainty. But with validated learning, you're not just wandering in the dark. You're moving swiftly towards the light of knowledge that illuminates the path to genuine progress and hopefully resounding success. So keep those hypotheses coming, roll out those MVPs, and let's learn our way to the top. In the world of startups, innovation is the buzzword on everyone's lips. But how do we ensure that our innovative efforts are actually taking us closer to our goals? This is where innovation accounting comes in to save the day. It's not your typical debits and credits. It's a groundbreaking approach that revolutionizes how we track and gauge success in an uncertain environment. Now, let's start by debunking a common myth. Innovation cannot be measured. Eric Ries lays out a clear method in the Lean Startup to show us that, indeed, it can and must be measured, albeit not in the traditional sense. We're not solely looking at financial statements here. We're considering actionable metrics that give us real insights. Think about it. When you launch a new product or feature, the number of users or revenue might start to climb. That's great, right? But what if those numbers don't tell the full story? Innovation accounting steps in to peel back the layers of surface data. It asks us to focus on the metrics that matter, those that can accurately predict and steer us towards long-term growth. Setting up actionable metrics requires us to first identify which user behaviors are good indicators of sustainable health for our business. For a social media platform, it might be the number of daily active users, whereas for a SaaS business, it might be the customer lifetime value. What's fascinating here is that innovation accounting doesn't just apply to the product. It also applies to how we improve our own processes and operations. By establishing clear hypotheses about our business model, we allow ourselves to learn and adapt based on customer feedback and behaviors. These are the fundamentals of validated learning, which we've talked about in a previous segment. So, armed with these metrics, we then set milestones. Not just any milestones, mind you, but ones that are strategically designed to test our assumptions and push us in the right direction. It might be achieving a certain conversion rate or hitting a target cost of customer acquisition. And finally, we prioritize. Innovation accounting doesn't let us get lost in the weeds. When we measure the right things, we focus on the work that leads to real, significant progress. It informs our decision-making, ensuring that we are spending our precious time and resources on what genuinely moves the needle. Now, I can hear you asking, isn't this just more data to drown in? But that's the beauty of innovation accounting. It simplifies the complexity. It's not about more data, it's about the right data, setting us on a course towards not just more users or more revenue, but towards building a sustainable and adaptable business that can weather the storms and scale the heights of the startup world. And that's the kind of innovation that counts. In the journey of any startup, the path is never a straight line. It's filled with twists, turns, and crucial decision points where leaders must choose whether to pivot or persevere. But what does that really mean? Pivoting isn't just about making random changes when something isn't working. It's a methodical shift in strategy that comes after testing hypotheses and getting feedback. It's born out of learnings that demonstrate the current course isn't leading towards the desired outcome, suggesting that a different approach might yield better results. Pivoting could mean altering your product features, changing your business model, or even targeting a different set of customers. The critical factor is that the decision to pivot is data-driven, not just a gut response to a challenge. On the flip side, persevering is about sticking to your strategic vision. It doesn't mean being stubborn in the face of contrary evidence, but rather, it involves staying the course because the data backs up that decision. When you persevere, you refine and optimize your strategies according to the feedback and the build, measure, learn cycle you've established. It's a choice to trust the process you've put in place and give your vision a chance to come to fruition. How do you know which route to take? It often boils down to the information you gather through validated learning. When you release a minimum viable product, it generates real-life data on what works and what doesn't. You measure your engagement, sales, customer feedback. All of these metrics are indicators that either validate your current path or signal the need for change. So, the decision to pivot or persevere isn't a simple one, and it isn't a one-time decision either. It's a critical and ongoing part of the entrepreneurial adventure. The Lean Startup methodology eases this process by providing a framework for decision-making that is based on learning and adapting rather than guessing and hoping. Remember, every successful startup has faced this crossroad, and it's the thoughtful consideration of whether to pivot or persevere that often leads to true innovation and growth. Keep an ear to the ground, an eye on the data, and you'll navigate this journey with the wisdom of a seasoned entrepreneur. The Lean Startup methodology isn't just a set of principles, it's a blueprint for success, proven time and again by companies that have embraced its approach. Let's delve into some of these success stories. Dropbox is a shining example. In the early stages, instead of developing a fully featured product, they focused on creating a simple video demo that explained the concept. This minimum viable product allowed them to gauge customer interest and gather feedback without investing in full-scale production. The result? An explosive surge in signups and a clear direction for growth. Similarly, Intuit, a giant in financial software, adopted lean startup methods despite being well-established. They created a separate lean startup team to develop new products quickly and test them with real customers. This led to the creation of QuickBooks Online, which was iteratively developed through customer feedback, captivating a whole new market. Then there's Zappos, the online shoe retailer. Their MVP was a website with shoe photos from local stores. When someone ordered a pair, the founder would purchase the shoes at full price and ship them, confirming the desire for such a service. This rudimentary start laid the groundwork for a venture that would revolutionize online shoe sales. These companies are just the tip of the iceberg, each one harnessing the power of lean startup principles to pivot, persevere, and ultimately prosper. They show us that no matter the scale, from nimble startups to established corporations, adopting a mindset of continuous innovation can lead to remarkable outcomes. All right, let's boil down the essence of the lean startup into bite-sized key takeaways. First off, embrace the concept of the minimum viable product, or MVP. This is all about finding the simplest version of your product that allows you to start the learning process as quickly as possible. It's not just about what you can build, though. The real gold is in the build, measure, learn feedback loop. Here's the deal. Build your MVP, measure how customers respond to it, and learn whether to pivot or persevere in your current direction. Each iteration is a cycle of learning, a step closer to a product that truly resonates with your audience. Validated learning is your North Star. Your startup success isn't measured by how busy you are or how much you produce. It's about understanding your customers' real needs and how your product can meet them. Every feature, product, or marketing campaign should be tested scientifically, using data to validate the worth of your efforts. And speaking of measurement, innovation accounting helps to make the progress tangible. It's a way of assessing your startup's performance with actionable metrics instead of vanity metrics. It's the kind of accounting that can influence your decision when you're at a crossroads of persevering or pivoting. Lastly, keep the vision flexible. A successful lean startup is one that knows when to change direction, what we call a pivot, without a loss of speed. It might mean a change in the product, strategy, or growth model, but it's all in the service of nailing what customers want. Implementing these principles is the difference between just having a startup and having one that's poised for growth, for learning, and ultimately for real sustainable success. And just like that, we've distilled down the essence of the lean startup into bite-sized insights for you right here on Snippets of Knowledge. A huge thank you for lending us your ears and minds. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and with Eric Ries's principles in your entrepreneurial toolkit, you're well equipped to take that leap. Embrace the lean approach, value validated learning, and make calculated pivots when necessary. Let's innovate wisely and remember that every setback could be a setup for an even greater comeback. Until next time, keep iterating, keep learning, and keep building something truly great. This has been Snippets of Knowledge, and I'm your host, reminding you to stay curious, stay driven, and take your startup to the heights it deserves. Catch you on the next episode.